Joining us now is Ellis Krauss, Professor Emeritus, School of Global Policy and Strategy at UC San Diego. Professor, thank you for your time today. Firstly, Mr. Kishida is already at a record low in popularity. Word is he's sacking Chief Cabinet Secretary Hirokazu Matsuno. Are more to follow, and how bad is this for him?
Well, that depends on how many more to follow, or depends on the police investigation. But this is a serious crisis. In some ways, it is, in an objective sense, not that serious in others. When the media refers to kickbacks, it is not as if these people were getting kickbacks for personal use. These are kickbacks from fundraising events when politicians exceed the quota they are given to sell tickets to these fundraising events. And most of the money is then spent on other political activities, including dinners, including hiring secretaries, etc. The problem here is that it is not illegal to do this. The problem is that they were not reported. And according to the fundraising law, these have to be reported, these kickbacks. And this is why these people are in serious trouble. So this is the problem for Prime Minister Kishida, who is already suffering, as you noted, from very low approval ratings.
Well, Professor, how is them not reporting those kickbacks, or rather the excess money? How does it look on the government? You say it's not that serious, or rather, it's not how media has painted it to be.
The problem is that Japanese voters have extremely high expectations for their politicians, for some good reason, since there have been a series of very bad scandals, much worse than this one, by the way. In the 1980s, one of the most influential politicians in the Liberal Democratic Party, Mr. Kishida's party, was found to have $50 million worth of gold bars in his office. There have been other scandals involving stock manipulation, etc., over the years. In the 1990s, the electoral reform law and the corruption law were severely strengthened. And as a result, there is much more transparency now than there was in the past. And that, of course, means that there are more cases of corruption supposedly unveiled, however serious or not that serious. And this is the thing that gives the impression that things are worse now than they were in the past, which is not true. Japanese politics is far less corrupt now than it was in the 1980s, for example, or 1990s. But Japanese voters, as I said, have high expectations, and they do not suffer any form of corruption easily.
So what do you think will happen then? Do you think this will spur a broader look into other factions and parties and how Japanese politics works in general? You've said it's already come a long way in terms of cleaning these things up.
Yes, it may spur other parties and look at a closer look at other parties. But, the LDP is the richest party, one of the richest parties. It is the party in power. So it is going to get the most scrutiny. It also, I think, raises a lot of money from business and wealthy individuals, and therefore is more prone to have scrutiny. The problem is that Mr. Kishida's popularity, for various reasons, is at an all-time low, as noted, and therefore this is not going to help. In terms of replacing more ministers or more top people in the LDP, so many politicians have been replaced this year or last year because of individual scandals involving politicians that I'm not sure how many of the top politicians in the LDP are left to put into many of these positions. Some people think that's a very good thing, because then a new generation will get elevated beyond what they might have, except for this removal of many of the top politicians.
So, Professor, what do you think we could see in regards to, the LDP. So it is quite a fragmented opposition. Is it likely to lose power altogether, or could we see the party still remain in power, but, its members changed?
Yes, it's a very good question. And that's the 64,000 yen question. It's the one everybody is asking. What effect will this have on the next election? Now, as noted, the LDP, the prime minister does not have to call another election until for 2 years, a year and a half at least. And therefore, Kishida could stay in power that length of time if the party allows him to. The problem is, who are they going to put in his place? And that is the big question. Will this lead to greater infighting in the department as several people fight to succeed him? Another possibility that I don't think has been raised very often is that Kishida himself might step aside, either before the presidential election of the LDP this coming year, or he might step aside, stay in power, and then step aside and allow somebody else to become prime minister before the next election if his approval ratings don't go up. It is a little bit, may I just interject and say, it's a little bit of a quandary as to why his approval ratings are so low. He's done a fabulous job, a very good job on foreign policy, on defense. However, he's been a little disappointing on following through on promises on domestic affairs. And it should be noted in comparative context that the voters of Japan are no different than the voters in many advanced democracies, in Europe, the United States, for example, in the sense that they are in a very ugly mood. And post-COVID, a lot of it is due to inflation, which has been, particularly on food prices, very bad in Japan. And they're very impatient for those things to go back to quote unquote normal, back to pre-pandemic levels. And of course, it takes some time. And so the voters are very, very impatient for quick solutions, as many of the voters in countries like France and the Netherlands, for example, have been. This, of course, has given an opening to right-wing parties in Europe to take power, and in the United States, for that matter, because of voter dissatisfaction. That's unlikely to happen in Japan because, frankly, the LDP is pretty much the center-right party in Japan. So whether the opposition can get their act together before the next election is a very big question. They haven't been able to for over 10 years now. And therefore 10, 15 years. Therefore, it's an open question with the LDP staying in power with somebody else, or the opposition, as in 2009, will be so dissatisfaction with the prime minister that they'll put another party in power. More likely, the LDP will stay in power with a new prime minister.
Professor, I appreciate your time this morning and for talking to us about this issue. Here is that it was not reported. Definitely interesting to watch the developments on this front. That was Ellis Krauss there, Professor Emeritus School of Global Policy and Strategy at UC San Diego.